The sky was dark, filled with smoke and sparks. A small human ship broke through the clouds, spinning fast, fire trailing behind. Inside, the pilot, a human soldier named Reed, gripped the controls tightly. His face was bleeding. His left arm hung useless, clearly broken. Alarm screamed all around him, but he stayed calm. "I'm not dying today," he whispered. The ship hit the ground hard, crashing through trees, sliding over rocks, and finally stopping at the edge of a glowing forest. Everything went silent except for the soft sound of fire crackling. Inside the broken ship, Reed opened one eye and coughed. He was alive, but barely. Reed crawled out of the wreck, dragging his injured leg. His arm was bent the wrong way and his uniform was torn. He looked around, tall glowing trees, soft purple grass, and strange lights floating in the air. It was not Earth, not any known colony. "This is a dead world," he said to himself. "I wasn't supposed to land here." He had heard stories of this planet, a forbidden place where humans were not welcome. A peaceful alien race once lived here, far from war and machines. But now it looked abandoned, quiet, and strange. Reed knew he couldn't survive long with his injuries. He needed shelter, food, and time, but first, he had to fix his arm. He took a deep breath, sat down against a rock, and stared at his broken limb. "I've done this before," he muttered. "Pain is just a message." He grabbed his arm tightly, counted to 3, and with a loud grunt, snapped it back into place. A sharp cry of pain escaped his lips. But he didn't scream. He just leaned back and breathed hard. Far away, behind a glowing tree, someone was watching. A girl, not human. She had soft blue skin, big silver eyes, and small folded wings. Her name was Ziri, and she had never seen a real human before. She had heard about them in old songs. From her mother, stories said humans were loud, dangerous, full of fire and pain, but this one looked different. He was alone, broken, but still strong. He didn't cry, didn't shout. He just kept going. Ziri stepped closer, but a twig cracked under her foot. Reed turned his head quickly, alert like a soldier. "Who's there?" he asked, grabbing a metal stick from the ground. Ziri gasped and hid behind the tree. She didn't speak. She was scared but curious. Reed stood up slowly, limping. His leg hurt, but he was used to pain. He looked around but didn't see anyone. "Must be in my head," he said softly. "I'm just tired." But Ziri stayed close, hidden, watching. She didn't want to run. She wanted to understand later. Reed found a small cave nearby. Half covered in moss, he pulled himself inside, set some dry leaves on fire, and sat near the warmth. He ate a dry energy bar from his suit and looked at his shaking hand.
"Still alive," he said with a weak smile. "Barely." From the shadows,
Ziri came closer. She wanted to see his face, his eyes, his pain. She had never seen someone fix their own arm like that. Her people used healing songs and light stones, but this human used only willpower. Suddenly, a strong wind blew through the trees. The fire flickered. Reed stood up and grabbed his stick again. This time, he saw her, just a flash of blue skin and silver eyes. "Hey!" he shouted. "Wait!" But Ziri turned and ran, scared. She had come too close. She ran fast, but her foot slipped on a wet rock. She fell, hit her head, and everything went dark. Reed followed the sound and found her lying on the soft grass. He checked her pulse, alive, just unconscious. "A kid?" he said softly. "No, not human." He picked her up gently. Surprised how light she was, he took her back to the cave, placed her near the fire. She looked peaceful, even in sleep different, but not dangerous. He sat beside her, watching the fire dance. "Guess we're both stranded now," he whispered. Two broken creatures on a broken world. Hook ending. As Reed closed his eyes to rest, Ziri opened hers slowly. She looked at the human beside her, then at his arm, then remembered the sound, that horrible snapping sound. And before she could stop herself, she gasped and fainted again. A soft wind moved through the glowing trees as the alien girl slowly opened her eyes. The firelight danced on the cave walls, and the scent of smoke and moss filled the air. Her head was pounding, but she remembered the human, his broken arm, the snapping sound. She sat up quickly, gasping, her silver eyes wide with fear. Then she saw him. The human sat nearby, silent, staring at the flames. His shirt was off, bandages wrapped around his chest, and dried blood stained his skin. His face looked tired but calm, like someone who had fought too many battles and didn't want to fight anymore. "You're awake," he said softly, without turning. "I didn't mean to scare you." Ziri didn't answer. She pressed her back against the cold cave wall, her wings twitching slightly. Her people had warned her. Humans were dangerous, but this one didn't move toward her. He just broke a piece of dried food and placed it gently on a flat stone between them. "I'm Reed," he said. "You don't have to talk, just don't run again, please." Ziri looked at the food, then at him. Her body was still shaking, but her mind was racing. This human had carried her, protected her, and even shared his fire. If he wanted to hurt her, he would have done it already. "I'm Ziri," she said finally, her voice soft like falling leaves. "Daughter of Mira, the healer." Reed turned his head and gave a small smile. "A healer, huh? I could have used one of those a few hours ago." Ziri watched his arm, now stiff and swollen, wrapped in rough cloth. "You fixed it yourself," she whispered. "No singing stones, no light, no medicine." Reed gave a tired laugh. "No choice, humans aren't very magical, but we're good at surviving." Ziri tilted her head. "You didn't even scream," he shrugged. "I've been through worse." The cave grew quiet, the fire popping softly between them. Ziri picked up the food and nibbled carefully. It was dry, tasteless, but warm. She studied him, his short brown hair, his strong jaw, the old scars on his body. He looked like someone who had seen too much pain, but his eyes didn't lie. "They were tired, not cruel. Why are you here?" she asked. "This planet is closed to humans. I didn't choose to land here," Reed replied. "My ship was attacked. I barely survived. I think I was falling for a long time." Ziri looked down. Her mother once said that stars sometimes dropped broken things onto their world. Old machines, dark metal, pieces of forgotten war, but this time, the stars had dropped a man. "You should not stay long," she said slowly. "If the elders find you, they'll punish you." "Even if you didn't mean to come," Reed nodded. "I get it, humans. We bring trouble. I've heard it all before." Ziri wanted to say something else, but she didn't know what. Instead, she asked, "Are you in pain?" Reed smiled. "Always." Ziri frowned. She had never seen someone so broken, yet so calm. His body was injured, but his mind felt clear. There was something strange about him. Not just human, not just soldier. Suddenly, a sharp noise came from outside. Both of them froze. Reed grabbed his metal stick. Moving slowly to the cave entrance, Ziri held her breath, her hands glowing faintly with soft blue light. Reed peeked outside. Leaves moved, but nothing was there, or almost nothing. A strange feeling washed over him. The air felt heavy, like something was watching from far away. He stepped back into the cave. "Something's out there," he whispered. "Not animals," Ziri nodded slowly. "I felt it too. A presence. Old and angry." Reed sat down again. "Still alert. I'll leave in the morning. If I can walk, I don't want to bring danger to you." Ziri looked at him. Truly looked. "You already brought it," she said softly. "But I don't think it followed you. I think it woke up because you're here." Reed met her eyes. They were deep like water, full of truth. He didn't know why, but he believed her hook ending that night. As they both tried to sleep, Ziri whispered something in her old language, a prayer her mother taught her. And outside, deep in the glowing forest, eyes opened, dark shapes moved, and the ground itself gave a low rumbling sound, as if the planet had just taken a breath. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Even the glowing leaves stopped moving, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Reed opened his eyes, his body stiff and sore. He looked around the cave. Ziri was sitting near the fire, her hands glowing faintly blue. She was whispering something in her alien tongue. The sound was soft, almost like a song. "What are you doing?" Reed asked, his voice low. "Listening," Ziri replied without turning. "The forest speaks when danger comes." Reed frowned. "Danger? What kind?" Ziri looked at him with fear in her eyes. "The kind that hunts without eyes. The kind that follows the smell of blood." Reed touched his wounded arm. Dried blood covered the cloth. He suddenly understood. "They can smell me," he whispered. Ziri nodded slowly. "They are called the Greenock. My mother told stories about them. Creatures born from the dark of the world. They come when pain calls them." Reed tightened his grip on his metal stick. "Then we need to move." But when he tried to stand, his leg almost gave out. Ziri caught him quickly, her small hands surprisingly strong. "You can't walk fast," she said. "They'll find us if we make too much noise." Reed looked toward the cave mouth. "I've fought worse," he said with a smirk. Ziri shook her head. "You've never fought Greenock. They don't bleed. They don't stop. A low growl echoed outside. Then another, closer. Reed motioned for Ziri to get behind the rocks. He crouched near the entrance, his eyes narrow. The sound of claws scratching against stone filled the air. Ziri held her breath. Her heart was pounding so loudly she thought the creatures would hear it. Through the darkness, she saw shapes, long, thin, and moving unnaturally. Their skin shimmered like liquid shadow, and their mouths opened sideways. No eyes, no noses, just endless rows of teeth, Reed whispered. How many? Ziri counted softly. 3, maybe 4. The beasts sniffed the ground, their heads twitching toward the cave. One of them hissed. The sound was sharp like broken glass. Ziri closed her eyes, whispering a soft melody under her breath. Her glowing hands began to dim, hiding the light. Reed waited, holding his weapon tight. He could hear his heartbeat echoing in his ears. He had fought soldiers, machines, and storms before, but this was something else, something alive and wrong. The first Greenock crawled closer, its long claws scraping the stone. Reed could see the steam coming from its mouth. The creature stopped at the entrance, sniffing the air. Then it tilted its head and made a sound like a whisper. Reed suddenly threw a small stone to the side. It hit another rock, making a sharp noise. The Greenock turned toward it instantly. 2 others followed, crawling toward the echo. Reed used the chance to whisper to Ziri. When I move, you run. Ziri shook her head. They'll kill you. Reed gave her a calm smile. They'll try. He stepped out into the open. The moment his boot touched the dirt, all 3 Greenock turned. They moved fast, too fast. Reed swung the metal pipe hard, hitting the first one in the mouth. The creature screamed, a horrible, shrill sound. The others lunged at him, but Reed ducked, hitting again. The pipe bent, but he didn't stop. Ziri watched, frozen. The human was fighting monsters without eyes, without mercy. His movements were wild but full of purpose. Every hit was heavy, every breath full of fire. One Greenock caught his arm with its claws, cutting deep. Reed yelled, but instead of falling, he used the pain. He smashed the creature's head against the rock again and again. Black liquid spilled out. The creature twitched and fell. The second Greenock jumped on his back. Reed rolled, grabbing a sharp stone and stabbing it into the creature's throat. The thing hissed and flailed before going still. Ziri ran out, tears in her eyes. Reed! Behind you! The last Greenock lunged. Reed turned too slow. It hit his leg, and he fell hard. Ziri screamed and lifted both her hands. A burst of blue light exploded from her palms. The Greenock screamed, its body burning in the strange light. Then it collapsed into ash. Silence filled the forest again. Only the sound of Reed's heavy breathing remained. He sat back, bleeding, shaking, but alive. Ziri ran to him. You're hurt, she said. Pressing her glowing hands against his wounds, her light sank into his skin, slowing the bleeding. Reed looked at her, confused. What was that? My mother's healing, she said softly. But it's weak. I can't heal deep wounds. Reed gave a small smile. You saved my life. Ziri looked down, her voice trembling. You saved mine first. They sat together as dawn began to rise. The first light of morning touched the forest, turning the air gold. Reed looked at the horizon and whispered, I thought this planet was dead. Ziri looked at him with sad eyes. It is, but it still remembers. Hook, ending, far above. In the sky, a faint red light flashed. Reed looked up sharply, his soldier instincts kicking in. That's no sunrise, he said. Ziri followed his gaze, her eyes widening in fear. The sky, she whispered. It's burning. The sky was red, not like a sunset, but like a warning. A single red line blinked again, and then again, slowly moving across the clouds like a searching eye. Reed and Ziri stared at it, their hearts heavy. That's not from this planet, Reed whispered. That's a scan. Ziri didn't understand the machine, but she understood the feeling. The forest had gone silent again, not with fear, but with sadness, like it knew what was coming, like it had seen this before. Reed stood slowly, wincing in pain. His leg was wrapped in leaves and cloth, his arm scratched and bruised. He wasn't ready for another fight, but he knew one was coming. "They found me," he said. "Someone followed the crash, maybe a raider ship." Ziri grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "You can't fight them, you're too hurt." Reed looked at her gently. "Then I'll die trying." "No," she said firmly. "If you die, I'll be alone again." Those words stopped him. She had never spoken like that before. Not with fear, but with truth. He looked at her, small, glowing. Not a warrior, not a soldier, but somehow her presence gave him strength. "I need to find shelter." "Real shelter," he said. "Not a cave, something with walls," Ziri thought for a moment, then pointed. "There is an old stone house deep in the forest. It was built by my people long ago. No one goes there now, but the walls are strong." Reed nodded. "Lead the way." They moved slowly through the forest, avoiding roots and deep shadows. Reed leaned on a branch as a cane, his breath sharp and shallow. Ziri sang soft songs under her breath, songs meant to hide footsteps and calm the wind. After an hour, they reached it, a large stone house covered in vines, half buried in moss, broken windows, cracked doors. But still standing, Reed stepped inside and touched the wall. "This will do," he said. But they were not alone. The wind shifted, and a sharp smell hit his nose. Smoke. Not from the house. From machines. He turned to the door just as a loud metal sound rang through the trees. A ship landed in a clearing, tall and black, lights glowing along its sides. Reed knew the model. Raider class. Built for capturing, not saving. The ship opened with a hiss and 3 armed figures stepped out. Humans, but not like Reed. They wore black armor, red visors, and carried long electric spears. They had no mercy in their eyes, target confirmed. One said, "Priority, capture or kill." Ziri pulled Reed back inside. "They saw you," she said, her voice shaking. "They'll come here," Reed nodded. "Then we make our stand." He looked around the old house, broken wood, sharp stones, vines. He began setting traps quickly. Ziri watched in silence, then helped. She added sticky sap to the floor, used her light to confuse small creatures that flew like alarms. Together, they built a defense, not strong but smart. The first raider stepped in and got hit by a swinging log Reed had tied to the ceiling. He fell hard, his weapon sliding across the floor. Reed grabbed it and fired once. Electric sparks flew and the raider stopped moving. The second raider kicked the door open. Reed rolled to the side, threw a rock, and used the spear like a club. It was not clean, not trained. It was wild and full of pain. Ziri screamed as the third raider charged at her. She lifted both hands, a shield of blue light glowing around her. The spear hit it and bounced back. Ziri screamed again, and the light grew brighter. The raider was blinded, fell to the side, and Reed finished him with a broken plank. It was over, but Reed was on the ground, breathing hard, blood running down his side. He had a deep cut from the last hit. Ziri ran to him, her hands glowing as she tried to stop the bleeding. "You shouldn't be alive," she whispered. "No one should survive that." Reed coughed and smiled. "You'd be surprised how stubborn I am." Ziri pressed her hands harder, but the glow was fading. "I can't heal all of it," she said. "Your body is too damaged." Reed looked at her and placed his hand on hers. "Then let me rest just for a moment." She nodded and leaned against him. The fire outside the house glowed brighter, the red light in the sky still flashing. Reed closed his eyes, his breath slowing. Hook ending. But then he whispered something, soft and strange, not in English, not in Ziri's language either. His voice was deep and hollow. Ziri froze. "Reed," she said carefully. "What did you just say?" Reed opened one eye, but it was glowing faintly gold. He looked at her and said in a low voice, "I think something inside me just woke up." Ziri stared at him, her hand still pressed against his chest. The golden glow in his eyes slowly faded. Reed blinked like he had just woken from a strange dream. He looked around the stone house confused. "What happened?" he asked. "You changed," Ziri whispered. "Your voice. It didn't sound like you." Reed touched his head. Feeling dizzy. "There's something inside me. I've known for years, but I didn't want to believe it." Ziri stepped back. Worried, "What are you?" She asked, "Are you really human?" Reed didn't answer right away. He sat down on a broken bench, breathing slowly. "I was born human," he said finally, "but they changed me." "Who?" Ziri asked softly. Reed closed his eyes. "The military. Earth's defense labs. They wanted to create super soldiers. Not just stronger bodies, but faster healing, faster thinking. Even language learning in seconds." Ziri sat beside him, listening closely. "But why would they do that to you?" "I volunteered," Reed said. "I had nothing, no family, no future. They said I could be part of something greater, so I said yes." His voice turned heavy. "But I didn't know the cost." He pulled up his sleeve and showed her a small glowing mark on his arm. "This isn't a tattoo," he said. "It's a control point. They injected nanocells, tiny machines, into my blood. They fix my bones, boost my strength, and they remember things." Ziri looked at the mark, her face pale. "That light in your eyes, it was them?" Reed nodded. "Yes. Sometimes they take over if my body is dying. They activate to keep me alive, but they also make me dangerous." Ziri stood up and walked to the broken window. The red light in the sky was still flashing. "They followed your ship," she said. "Whoever did this, they want their machine back." Reed stood too, his movements slow but steady. "I'm not their machine," he said firmly. "I escaped years ago. I've been hiding ever since. But now they know you're here," Ziri said. "And if they come, they'll bring more than raiders." Reed looked outside with her. "Then we run," he said. "We leave this place and go somewhere they can't find us." Ziri shook her head. "There is no place like that. My people know how to hide, but not from skies that burn." Silence filled the room again. Only the wind moved through the trees. Whispering through broken glass, Reed turned to her. "There's something else," he said. "When I was fighting earlier, I didn't feel tired, not like before. It was like something was guiding me." Ziri frowned. "Like what?" Reed paused. "I don't know, maybe the nanocells or maybe something older." "Older?" Ziri asked, confused. Reed nodded slowly. "When I landed here, I thought it was an accident, but now I'm not sure. Maybe this planet called me here." Ziri's wings twitched. "There is an old story before my people left the stars. They made a promise to protect something, a light buried deep in the world's heart. A gift or maybe a weapon no one remembers, but they said one day it would call to a dying warrior." Reed looked at her, eyes wide. "You think that's me?" Ziri didn't answer. She walked to a shelf covered in dust and vines. She moved some old cloth and pulled out a small metal sphere, glowing softly blue. "My mother said if this ever shines again, it means the heart is waking." She placed the sphere in his hand. It glowed brighter, almost white. Reed felt warmth travel up his arm, into his chest, into his mind. "What is this?" he asked. Ziri stepped back. "I don't know, but it responds to you suddenly." A voice echoed in Reed's head. It was not human, not machine, just a whisper. "You are the chosen?" The last chance, Reed dropped the sphere. His hands shaking, Ziri picked it up and held it close. "The heart of the world is not a place," she said. "It's inside you now." Reed looked down, silent for the first time in years. He didn't feel alone. He didn't feel broken. He felt awakened, hook ending. Then the ground shook. Not like before, not soft like footsteps, but deep. Like something huge had moved beneath the forest. Ziri dropped the sphere. Reed grabbed his weapon. The trees outside bent and cracked. Something was coming. Something the planet itself had buried long ago. And now it had sensed the heart had chosen its bearer. The ground shook again, louder this time. Dust fell from the cracks in the old ceiling. Ziri's wings fluttered as she stepped closer to Reed. "What's happening?" she whispered. Reed stood still, holding the glowing blue sphere in his hand. It pulsed softly, warm like a heartbeat. "I don't know," he said, "but something big just woke up." They ran to the door of the stone house and looked toward the sky. The red scanning beam was no longer a line, it had become a net. Glowing over the clouds like a blood-colored web, at the center of it hung a ship. Massive, silent, floating like a black moon. "That's not a raider ship," Reed said slowly. That's a collector class. Ziri looked at him confused. What does that mean? It means, Reed replied, they're not here to search. They're here to take. The ship released smaller crafts, black drones with flashing red lights. They flew across the trees in every direction, scanning, burning, searching. One of them passed overhead. Ziri pulled Reed under the thick vines. The drone paused for a second, then moved on. They're looking for the sphere, Reed said. Not just me, Ziri nodded. The heart of the world. They must know what it can do. Reed turned the sphere in his hand. What can it do? Ziri looked unsure. Some say it holds the memory of life. Some say it's a weapon that ends stars. My people feared it. That's why they buried it. Reed closed his fist around it. It's awake now, he said, and it chose me. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the forest. One of the small ships had found a hidden village from afar. They saw smoke rise and lights flash like lightning. Ziri's eyes filled with tears. My people, she whispered. They're still out there, Reed turned to her. Then we saved them. Ziri looked surprised. You can barely walk. I'll crawl if I have to, he said. We don't leave anyone behind. They moved through the trees. Sticking to the shadows, the forest was alive with screams, smoke and flashing lights. One drone spotted a group of Ziri's people hiding in a hollow tree. It raised a weapon. Reed didn't wait. He threw a rock at full speed, hitting the drone's sensor. It turned, targeting him now. But Ziri raised her hands and shouted a sharp note. A wave of blue energy blasted from her palms, knocking the drone into a tree. It sparked, then went silent. The hiding villagers came out slowly, 2 elders, a child and a wingless boy. They stared at Reed in fear. He's human, one of them said. Ziri stood in front of him. He's with me, she said. He saved me. The elders looked at each other, then nodded. We have others trapped, they said. In the old temple, Reed stepped forward. Show me. They led the way through twisted paths and burned bushes. More drones circled above, but now Reed could feel them coming. Like a strange pull in his chest, he knew where they were. Before they arrived, the sphere was changing him at the temple. 3 small ships had landed. Armed soldiers in black armor were dragging prisoners out. Old ones. Young ones, anyone who moved was shocked with electric rods. Reed watched from behind a stone wall. His fists clenched. Ziri put her hand on his shoulder. You're not strong enough, she said. They'll kill you. Reed looked at her. Maybe, he said, but not before I make them regret landing here. He stood up and walked out into the open. The soldiers turned their weapons toward him. One shouted, Target identified, human-class rogue. Reed didn't speak. He simply raised the glowing sphere into the air. The moment it caught the sunlight, it exploded in a burst of light. All systems around him blinked and glitched. The soldiers froze, their visors flickering. One of them fired. The shot hit Reed in the chest. Ziri screamed, but he didn't fall. He stepped forward again, smoke rising from his uniform. A second shot hit his leg. Reed grunted but kept walking. His eyes now glowed fully gold. The nanocells in his blood were awake, and so was something else. He grabbed a spear from the nearest soldier and snapped it like a twig. Another charged at him. Reed picked him up and threw him across the clearing. Ziri's people watched in awe. The human was fighting like he belonged to the stars. Like the forest itself was holding him up. One soldier raised a blade and shouted, For Earth's control. But before he could swing, a massive root shot up from the ground and impaled him through the chest. Everyone froze, even Reed. Ziri stepped forward. Looking at the soil, It's the planet, she whispered. It's protecting you, hook ending. The sky flashed again. This time not red but white, so bright it hurt to look at. A new ship arrived, twice the size of the last. It hovered over the forest, silent, cold, and then a voice came from the clouds, deep and echoing. Return the vessel or we burn the world. The sky turned white, not from sunlight, but from a massive ship that blocked the clouds. It hovered like a god above the forest, silent and still. Then the voice came again, booming across the land. Return the vessel, or we burn the world. Reed stood in the middle of the temple clearing, his chest scorched, his leg wounded. The glowing blue sphere pulsed in his hand like a heartbeat. Ziri stood behind him. Her people gathered in fear. Even the trees had gone silent. Reed looked up at the ship. His eyes were no longer just gold, they burned like suns. I'm not your vessel, he shouted back. I'm not your weapon, I'm a man. And I choose to stay. For a moment there was no answer. Then a loud hum began to grow from the sky. It was the sound of weapons charging. Ziri stepped forward and grabbed his arm. "They'll destroy everything," she said. "Run, please," Reed turned to her. "I'm done running," he said. "This world gave me something no lab ever did," Ziri looked into his eyes. "What?" she asked. "A reason to fight," he said with a soft smile. Suddenly long beams of red light shot down from the ship. Reed stepped forward and raised the sphere above his head. The beams hit the light, but instead of burning, they stopped midair. The sphere absorbed the energy. Glowing brighter, then it cracked. Ziri gasped. "What's happening?" Reed looked at the sphere as lines of light crawled across it like veins. "I think it's breaking," he said. "But maybe that's what it needs to do." The sphere shattered, no explosion. No fire, just light. It poured out of his hands and into his chest. Reed fell to his knees but didn't scream. He closed his eyes and let the light fill him. Then he stood up. Not as a man, not as a weapon, but as something new. The nanocells inside him merged with the ancient light. His body healed in seconds, muscles stronger, skin tougher. The wound on his chest closed without a scar. Ziri's people stepped back in awe. Even the forest bent gently toward him as if bowing. Reed looked at the ship above and said, "You built me, but you never owned me." He raised both hands. And the ground shook, not from fear, but from life. Roots shot up from the soil. Vines reached for the sky, and from every tree, blue light poured upward like beams. The giant ship tried to pull away, but the planet held it. Roots wrapped around the engines, pulling it down slowly. In a final act, the ship launched a missile straight at Reed. But before it could land, Ziri stepped forward and sang, a high, clear note that echoed through the sky. Her voice met the missile midair and it froze. Then it turned into harmless dust blown away by wind. The ship let out one last sound. Not a command, not a warning, just fear. Then it fell, slowly, crashing into the deep forest far away. Silence returned, but this time it was peaceful. Ziri ran to Reed and hugged him tightly. "You did it," she said with tears in her eyes. "You stopped them." Reed smiled and placed a hand on her back. "No," he said, "we did." The villagers came forward. Eyes wide and shining, they didn't kneel, they didn't cheer. They simply stood in respect, for the human who didn't break, for the human who changed everything. Days passed, the forest healed, the red sky turned blue again. Reed helped rebuild the old stone house. He and Ziri planted new trees, sang new songs, and wrote new stories. He wasn't a soldier anymore, he wasn't a runaway. He was part of something living, something true. Ziri once asked him, "If you had the chance, would you go back to Earth?" Reed looked at the glowing trees, the peaceful sky, the people who now smiled at him like family, and he shook his head. "No," he said. "This is home now." Final hook ending, closing voiceover style. And deep beneath the soil, where ancient roots touched stone, the heart of the world pulsed again, not in fear but in peace. For the first time in 1,000 years, the planet whispered, the human stayed.